So before we get started talking about Charmander, I want to give y'all an interesting fact concerning Charmander. Did you know that Charmander, who is probably the most popular starter of all time and probably has the most popular design of an evolution line of all time, he's actually the weakest starter among the original Kanto starters? Yes, I know. Some people probably didn't know that. Some of y'all probably did, because I know I got some very smart people out here that's probably professors as well. But what's up, you guys? ProfessorShade here. I'm an online Pokemon professor, and in today's video, we're going to analyze the evolution line of Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard. And of course, we're going to go over some interesting facts concerning Charmander's evolution line. And for those that may not know, Charmander is the 4th Pokemon in the National Pokédex. Being the 2nd starter Pokemon appearing in the National Pokédex, Charmander's Pokédex entry says, "The flame on its tail shows the strength of its life force. If Charmander is weak, the flame also burns weakly." And of course, with Charmander, you really don't want that flame to go out completely, because that's not good for Charmander. I just put it like that. But Charmander is 2 feet tall. Also is in the category of being a lizard, which is very interesting because a lot of people for the longest time was thinking that, okay, Charmander has to be some type of dragon because Charizard, its final evolution, looked like a dragon, but no, that is not the case. Charmander is a lizard, and also his weight is 18 pounds, and the ability that Charmander knows is Blaze. Charmander is a fire type Pokemon that has the weaknesses of water, of course, because it's a fire type, and also ground and rock. Now, when it comes to Charmander stats, Charmander has a base stat total of 309 and also able to learn moves such as Ember, Flamethrower at level 24, and also Flare Blitz at level 40. Charmander also made his first appearance in the Pokemon games Red and Blue, actually being on the cover of Pokemon Red, one of the most iconic video games of all time, and also being part of one of the most iconic trio of starters of all time, which being Charmander himself, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. Charmander also made his debut in the Pokemon anime series, and the episode was called The Stray Pokemon, which was episode 11 of the first season. Now, I will say this, when it comes to that episode in particular, it's pretty sad, and I think it's one of the more iconic episodes when it comes to Pokemon, because a lot of people still remember that episode to today if you ask somebody if they watch Pokemon. Now, I will say, when it comes to Charmander, Charmander is a really nice Pokemon, easy to get along with, but I cannot really say the same when it comes to his next evolution, and that's being Charmeleon, which we're going to go ahead and talk about now. So Charmeleon is the number 5th Pokemon in the Pokédex, and the Pokédex entry says for Charmeleon that when it swings its burning tail, the temperature around it rises higher and higher, tormenting its opponents. Which makes sense because Charmeleon is kind of like a rebellious teen when it comes to Charmander evolution line, if you know about Charmeleon. But Charmeleon is about 3 feet tall, categorized as a flame, which that makes sense, so it went from a lizard to a flame. It also weighs almost 42 pounds and also has the ability Blaze. Charmeleon has a base stat total of 405, also share the same weaknesses as Charmander, and just like Charmander, Charmeleon made his video game debut in Pokemon Red and Blue, and Charmeleon made his anime debut in episode 43 in the Pokemon anime series, where it went ahead and battled against an Executor, which is weak to fire, so that's an easy W that Charmeleon was able to go ahead and pick up. And also, here's a fun fact about Charmeleon. Charmeleon's name doesn't make much sense in English, as it has almost no shared physical characteristics with a chameleon. Charmeleon uses its tail extensively, but that's almost exclusively for fighting, while chameleons use them for climbing and holding on to things. Now, despite that, Charmeleon has a very cool design. Now, even though it have a cool design, it's not as iconic as his last evolution, and that is Charizard. Now, Charizard is the 6th entry in the National Pokédex, and his National Pokédex entry says, if Charizard becomes truly angered, the flame at the tip of his tail burns in a light blue shade, which I'm going to talk about that later on too. Now, they have Charizard listed as 5 foot tall, which, by the way, is still kind of surprising to me to this day because Charizard looked like a dragon, even though he's not a dragon, and also categorized as a flame, weighs almost 200 pounds, and has the ability Blaze. And Charizard is actually a dual typing because his typing changed when he evolved from Charmeleon to Charizard, and his typing now is a fire flying type, and his weaknesses also changed. It's still weak to water, but it's also now weak to electric. Because it's a flying type, it's still weak to rock, but it's not weak to ground no more because it's a flying type, so that makes a lot of sense. Charizard has a base stat total of 534, and also Charizard can learn moves that's flying type moves and dragon type moves now since its typing and all changed. And depending on how you structure your team, Charizard can be a great fit on your team depending on what game you're playing exactly. And speaking of that, Charizard actually made his debut in the Pokemon games Red and Blue, actually being on the cover of the game like I had mentioned earlier. Charizard also made his debut in the Pokemon anime series episode 46. Yes, it evolved pretty quickly from Charmeleon to Charizard, and that went in battle out with an Aerodactyl. And I have a very interesting fact concerning Charizard as well. So for y'all TCG players, and a lot of y'all may even know this when it comes to the TCG, but Charizard cards are some of the rarest cards that you can get a hold to, and people make some good money off of it. Like a Charizard 1999 card sold for $420,000, which is still crazy with how much money people are making off of the trading cards. But at the same time, it's not really surprising because Charizard is kind of looked at as the secondary mascot when it comes to the Pokemon series. This design really stood the test of time when it comes to Pokemon designs, which I could really say that for different Pokemon, but Charizard really did it right alongside Pikachu, for example, who is the actual mascot of Pokemon. Now, when it comes to Charizard, he do have other forms as well outside of just the last evolution in the main evolution line, and that's being his Mega Evolutions, which I said Mega Evolutions with an S because Charizard has more than one Mega Evolution, which is still wild because you have Mega Charizard X and Y, and Mega Charizard X has a blue flame coming out of his tail and his mouth, like what I was talking about in the Pokédex entry earlier, where it says if he's really angered, he gonna have a blue fire flame on his tail. Well, guess what? There you go right there, Mega Evolution. And then also the Gigantamax version of Charizard, which is pretty cool as well. And these are the shiny versions of Charmander's evolution line as well. I gotta say, Charizard Shiny in particular is one of the best shiny Pokemon designs of all time. And for the TCG players, here's one of the Charizard cards right here. And you know, like I said, that the Charizard cards sell very well if you get one. Now, when it comes to Charmander evolution line, what is my final takeaway? What's my analysis when it comes to this evolution line? I'm going to say this is definitely one of the best design evolution lines in my opinion of all time, and I gotta say it look pretty cool. Now, unfortunately, I will say this because I like to compare Pokemon to its peers, which Charmander peers would be like Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and all, because that's the Kanto starters. Well, Charmander is really not the best selection among the three starters. I would say at least until you get like the Mega Evolution, if it even have it in the game. Like if you play the Pokemon X and Y game, then yes, like Charizard Mega is actually a viable option to have in the game. Or even with Pokemon Legends Z8, which is based around the Mega Evolutions of the Pokemon as well. Now, I will say this, as cool as Charizard is, he's not the strongest among the Kanto starters. He's actually the weakest. But if you go ahead and work around it, you can make it work, because I know a lot of people really like Charizard, and Charizard is a cool design, so I see why people would pick up a Charizard and that would be their favorite. He's better on the offense. His defense is really not that good, but you could build a team around him if you really want to make it work, of course. But that is my analysis when it comes to the Charmander evolution line. I will say stay tuned because I plan on talking about many evolution lines, if not all of them at some point in time, because there is a lot of Pokemon to cover. And if you'd like to see more, subscribe or follow me depending on platform you watch me on. But thank you for watching. I'm Professor Shade. This is what I do, and I am out.